Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine as 2025 kicks off in partnership with Norman Goodfellows, and it is still very much summer, and I hope most of you are still on a semblance of holiday, but even if you're not, it is the time of the year when white wine tends to hold sway. And of all the white wines in 2024 that seemed to get the world's attention, there was Chardonnay above all. It was a really good year for South African Chardonnay and for the diverse interpretation of Chardonnay that we produce across South Africa, which means in talking about white wine as we do today, kicking off with Chardonnay is the natural thing to do. However, I'm not starting with the wine because I've got a far more important conversation as Dan Really Likes Wine briefly rebrands itself as Dan Really Likes Birds, because Johann de Vet, you and de Wetshof have got quite an exciting campaign underway. Welcome back to the show. Lovely to have you on. A very happy new year. Tell me about this really cool partnership that is going to see wine and conservation work hand in hand.
Thank you, Dan. We've obviously, one of our oldest single vineyards is the Batelier vineyard, which was named after the eagle Batelier. And we know it's highly endangered because of poisoning and, a lot of, it is an aggressive predator, but it's also a scavenger. So, it is under threat from many, many angles. And we've always had a love relationship with the eagle. And since I was a child, I remember my dad, when we drive in the bushveld or somewhere, saying, "Oh, look, that's the Batelier. That's how it looks." So it's something that I kind of grew up as this iconic bird, and also the vineyard named after this bird. And then this year came on, and it was the National Bird of the Year. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us to be involved with it and to get involved and to kind of throw our weight behind the protection of the eagle.
In terms of the mechanics, how is this working? I am off to buy myself a case of Batelier Chardonnay at my local Norman Goodfellows. How is that directly going to help with the protection of a beautiful, but as you say, very endangered part of our wildlife?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not as if it's not as if I use proceeds from the sales of the vineyard or the wine to go to protecting the bird. It's something that we do as a family, or as a company rather, and so we feel it's our motto to conserve, and it's part of our ethos. So it was kind of a natural move to get involved with the protection of these birds, and seeing as it has a place close to our hearts.
I didn't really need any more encouragement to drink the Batelier, but you've certainly given it to me nonetheless. And I don't think too many people will find themselves in a different frame of mind, because it is, even by your high standards, a standout Chardonnay. For somebody who hasn't perhaps had the Batelier before, what is it, Johann, for you that allows you to create such a beautiful expression of Chardonnay from de Wetshof in the Batelier?
Look, the Batelier vineyard has a lot of history to it. I mean, just from a vineyard point of view, it came out of the cuttings that my dad smuggled into South Africa back in the late or early 80s, late 70s. So, and that the Batelier vineyard kind of paved with the court case and all of that, kind of paved the way of the new South African wine industry. It eased the processes of bringing in new varietals, new clonal selection. So the Batelier vineyard was integral, or the material of which it's coming, or which the vineyard comes out of, is integral in that part of history. So you've got a lot of history behind the vineyard, number one, and then also where we are. I mean, Robertson, high limestone soils. The vineyard is actually north facing, so it's not a cooler hang, it's a warmer hang for us. But it gives you wines with masculinity, with structure, broad-shouldered Chardonnay, and definitely a place in our lineup for a wine like that.
At the top of the show, Johann spoke about how Chardonnay had such a great year in 2024, 2025 looking similar, I'm sure. There's a new harvest almost upon us. The styles we make differ across South Africa, and I think that's part of the beauty of South African Chardonnay, but as very much the spiritual home of South African Chardonnay, given your dad and his wonderful smuggling efforts, how proud are you to see where Chardonnay has got in South Africa from some slightly different beginnings not that long ago?
Look, you can't be anything but proud of the variety and the producers and where Chardonnay has gone in the last 20 years. It's from an image point of view, it's one of the highest prices of wines internationally that South Africa exports. It is, if you look at acclaim from a wide variety of critics, Chardonnay is shooting the lights out in South Africa from the very various areas, and that just shows you the beauty of the variety, number one, but it also shows you that the producers are really understanding what they're working with, and they're starting to understand their terroir, their sites, and how to complement the Chardonnays coming from those sites. So, I mean, you can't be anything but proud of where Chardonnay is in South Africa. It is absolutely shooting the lights out.
It certainly is. Before we let you go, because you have a summer holiday to complete before the new harvest comes around, just a word or two quickly on aging. One of the wines I really enjoyed over the course of this summer was a 12, 13-year-old Chardonnay that had developed into something completely different, but wondrously so. Where do you sit on the drink it nice and fresh as it's just arrived versus let's see what can happen a decade or more down the road?
Look, Chardonnay as a young wine will always be pretty. It's got a lot of fruit, it's got structure, it's got complexity. Depends how the wine was aged. Is it unoaked, lightly oaked, malolactic fermentation, no malolactic fermentation? All these styles or ways of making wine affects the variety, and that's what makes it interesting. And the young wines are really pretty and they're showy and something to be really enjoyed now. But then again, as those wines age, as they spend a year or two or three down the line in the bottle, in my book, they just become more and more interesting. You start to lose the upfront fruit, and you start to get the minerality, bit of bottle age that gives you a bit of a nutty roundness to the wine, and that's actually where I think Chardonnay is much more interesting as a variety.
It can age brilliantly, which I think seems to be the case for the people who make it as well, because Johann de Vet has not aged a minute in the decade or so that I've known him, which is most annoying for me, but wonderful for you and especially for Mrs. de Vet, I am sure. Congratulations on the drive to protect the Bateleur. It's a natural one, and as I say, it gives me even more reason to go out and get some of my very favourite Chardonnay. Enjoy what is left of the holiday, and best of luck for the upcoming harvest, and hopefully the next glass of wine we have together will be in person down in Robertson, possibly with a soaring Bateleur eagle above us, Johann.
Thank you very much, Dan. You too. Enjoy the rest of your holiday and your time off.
There we go. Johann de Vet from de Wetshof, one of the great architects of South African wine, and in particular South African Chardonnay, and now with an added conservation note to what is an estate that continues to give us such wonderful stories and wonderful wine across South Africa. As we kick off 2025 and move through a summer that has involved plenty of white wine appreciation, certainly has in the Dan Really Likes wine cellar, there has been a lot of Chardonnay drunk. Now, I've spoken to Johann de Vet from de Wetshof about what makes the Chardonnay of Robertson quite so magical. What of the Chardonnay of Tesselaarsdal and of the Hemelanada? Well, we'll find out exactly how the Chardonnay is going in a moment, but first of all, it's not that long since I went to visit the latest chapter in this amazing journey of Berene Sauls. Berene, lovely to have you back on the show. What has been happening? How are things looking at Chateau Berene, and are the vineyards starting to take shape?
Yes, thank you very much, Dan. So, we've planted about 1,000 vines of Chardonnay this year, 2,000 vines of Pinot. Before that, we did the test plantings because, the soils and climate in Tesselaarsdal is a bit different to the Hemelanada. which is in the Overberg. So currently, I produce Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from the Yammelanade Ridge, of grapes that I still source in since the first vintage from Laviette Babylon Vineyards in the Yammelanade Ridge. But Chateau Tesselaarsdal will be, well, we'll probably know the grapes quality in about 3 years. And in the meantime, I'm working behind the scenes to have that area, the Tesselaarsdal area, registered as an appellation. So I first had to start with my vineyard blocks, getting that registered. And so that's what I'm doing behind the scenes and feeding Savas data, weather data, and all that. So it's a completely new appellation that I'm trying to establish for Tesselaarsdal, and which would be absolutely amazing for Tesselaarsdal as a whole, I think, the community, etc., the area.
I always know whenever I speak to you, there's going to be something wondrous and exciting happening, because you are such a groundbreaker, and you love doing all of this stuff. And all the more so because it centers around home. You're just a few minutes walk almost in your new vineyards from where you grew up. Is there a sense now that actually this really is real, that your vineyards actually are going to happen, that this amazing culmination of your wine journey is headed to where once you were only really dreaming?
Then for sure, I never knew I would be a farmer in the end of the day. And we worked very hard to establish that those vineyards that's currently there, it's being mended and maintenance and tended to by my dad, Brian Sauls, and a few members of the community. So they're doing a stellar job. We still have the viticulturist on WhatsApp assisting us with that journey. But those vines is in the best possible care, and establishing those vineyard blocks just made it real for us. It almost made it official for us. And now we can also talk in the same lane as we are now the wine producers, if you know what I mean, or grape producers. And it just elevates or my vision, and what we want for Tesselaarsdal just a little bit more. So no, I would have never have guessed. Well, I probably would have guessed it would come true, because, to be honest, if I can't do it, I don't think anyone can.
You are a force of nature, and that's been made very clear for some time now. A force of nature who delivers two terrific wines, the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay, which is the focus for today, given we're still in summer, and Chardonnay is a real hot topic. I think, Berene, the white grape charge is led by Sauvignon Blanc in terms of sales. It's led by Chenin in terms of what the world thinks we can deliver for fine wine. But Chardonnay's status, Chardonnay's emergence as something truly world-class, I feel in the last year or two has really become that much more pronounced.
I think it has. And also, then, when I came into the wine industry, which is about 24 years ago, the Chardonnays was all also aged in wood. It was made in a certain traditional style, Burgundian style, which is it's great. It works great. And from there, I've seen Chardonnay wine styles evolving and being a little bit innovative. As you know, the Tesselaarsdal Chardonnay is mostly aged in amphorae, in clay pots, and it just brings another, I can almost say, another type of innovative style or wine style into the mix, with not disturbing the fruit, but you have this pure Chardonnay sitting there. And you see more and more of those type of wine styles kind of evolving. And that's why I say I think Chardonnay is holding its own, and you get the most beautiful Chardonnays in South Africa.
You also get a wide variety of Chardonnay, whether it is the Chardonnay of Robertson or the Chardonnay of Stellenbosch, which I think is also making more and more of a name for itself just down the road, the Chardonnay of Elgin, and then the Chardonnay with which you are familiar, which is the Chardonnay of the Hemelanade, the region we so often compare to Burgundy from both a white and a red perspective. What is it for you, 24 years into the wine industry, that with Chardonnay is allowing Hemelanade and over the next few years, I'm sure Tesselaarsdal as well, to create something quite so special?
I think the wines here from the Hemelanade especially is very reflective of site. And so, and also the Hemelanade is known for its quality grapes of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. then we'll have to figure out the Overberg. I guess we'll only know once we taste it and produce it, the coming vineyards. But for us here in the Hemel en Aarde, it's beautiful to actually see this cool climate Chardonnays. And, the Hemel en Aarde is demarcated into 3 appellations. So to see, the reflection and the wine profiles of all 3 appellations for us is actually the most beautiful thing ever, because of the soil difference slightly, and also the kind of elevation and also the distance from the cool Atlantic Ocean. So I think to taste or to drink wines from the Hemel en Aarde is such a treat, because you kind of get a 3-in-1 if you kind of source from all 3 appellations. So yeah, you want this beautiful fruit, very Burgundian styles coming from the Hemel en Aarde, and as you know, we are also cool climate, kind of, we reference back to Burgundy. So it's wines we are truly proud of, and a beautiful reflection of sight.
Most certainly is. And that reflection of sight in closing, Berene, is going to lead this new charge into the wine world. Where do you sit? How long until Tesselaarsdal becomes an award itself? And how long until, do you think, the very first wines from your very own vineyards will be upon us?
So Dan, I still have the clock set at the date and time that I gave you. So 2031 will be the first vintage, made in bottle and released basically for the Tesselaarsdal Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from that area. The Pinot Noir and Chardonnay the Chardonnay that we planted now is also the first Chardonnay and Pinot Noir plantings in Tesselaarsdal. So I like to have it as history in the making, but it could be the worst or the best Pinot from that area, but it will be very reflective of site. And we will know, do we have a winning recipe? Is this the next Chardonnay area? We'll never know. We are doing this for the first time, and we'll know in 7 years, or now about 6 years, what's going on. But in the first, I'm planning to press in next year, with even the tiniest bunches on there. I'm planning to press, and then for the years after that. So every harvest I'll press. I won't release or do anything with the wine, but just to kind of, check it out, taste it, see how it age, and all of those things. So it's a process. It's something I'm looking very much forward to. But 2031 is the date.
2031 is in my diary. It's my 40th birthday, so I'm very excited about 2031 and that Chardonnay. I think Jancis and Tim Atkin and Neil and Jamie and all the rest of the big names have got their flights booked out for 2031 as well. Enjoy it. Best of luck with the upcoming harvest as well, because there's wine to be made before 2031. But thank you. It's been a pleasure having you back on the show, and we'll look forward to seeing you back on the vineyard soon as this story continues to unfold.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
There we go, Berene Sauls. Wasn't that long ago I got to visit what, in all fairness, looked like a fairly unimpressive patch of ground, and then you hear Berene talk about it and you realise that you are somewhere magical, and 2031's countdown is going to lead us into something extraordinary. The Chardonnay of Tesselaarsdal made at home. South Africa's rockstar white grape for some time now has been Chenin Blanc, and although Chardonnay has been rocketing up the rankings, and although Sauvignon Blanc remains the big seller, it is the South African touch with Chenin Blanc that sets it apart and makes it, by some distance, the best in the world. And that is a combination of having a great place to make it and rather good people to make it for us. One of those is somebody who I used to just call my mate Lukas, but I now have to introduce him as Mr. van Loggerenberg, sir, because he is the newest member of the Cape Winemakers Guild. Congratulations, such wonderful news.
Thank you very much, Dan. Really blessed and humbled to be part of such an esteemed organization.
Give us the process quickly. Who phoned you to tell you? Did you have a 35-person camp-style rod-like grilling? Have you learnt the secret handshake yet? How does it all work?
Yeah, so you had to get nominated and vetoed, and Kevin Grant from Ateraxia nominated me, which is a massive honor because he's someone that I really look up to, especially what he's done with Chardonnay. And then a few guys nominated or vetoed it, and then as the year went on, kind of you tend to forget about these things. And then I got a phone call. I was actually busy bottling a few weeks ago, and then I heard Sam O'Keefe's voice, and she said that I've been appointed to the Winemakers Guild, and I think I almost dropped a bottle of wine. So no, it was a big excitement and a massive surprise when I got the phone call.
Massive surprise to you, perhaps, Lukas. I don't think to any of the rest of us, because you've been delivering such exceptional wine. Just before we talk about that wine, just in terms of this endorsement, the winemakers don't do it for the stickers. You don't do it for the labels, for the 98 points. It's obviously nice when that happens. But when you get something like this, now, when you get added to a WhatsApp group that includes the best of the best, this is your Springbok call-up. This is your winning a World Cup. This is a really, really special moment as a winemaker.
Yeah, I think so. It's obviously when I started back in 2015, when me and my wife Roxanne decided to start Van Loggerenberg Wines. This was obviously not something that we had planned or written down as a 5-year or 10-year goal, but obviously our biggest goal was just to bottle and produce some really honest wines that speaks of our amazing country. And I think just I'm blessed that with the vineyards that we worked with from the beginning, I think the big word was consistency was for me always very key. And so it's nice to after almost 10 years to get that recognition, and it just proves us that, because sometimes, especially in the last 5 years, you tend to might doubt some of the calls that you make, but I think it's a nice recognition that we're on the right pathway, and that honesty prevails.
You've been consistent with the wine that you've produced, which is a big part of leading to this accolade. You've also been consistent with the homage that you pay to a particular part of the wine world. And that part of the wine world would be the Loire Valley, and the Cabernet Franc and the Chenin Blanc that you deliver every year has got an increasingly cult following. Because you've got not just a masterful touch with it, but clearly a real love of what the Loire is about. Where does that come from? Where did that love affair start?
Yeah, I think when I went for the first year on holiday to France, myself and Roxanne, and then my good roommate Berene, who's also on the guild, we went to the Loire Valley for 4 days, and I had my this epiphany moment in the Bourget area at Domaine de la Chevalerie. And I don't know, there's just something special about the Loire area, the people especially. I love all of France, but the Loire people for me are very close to my heart. They're very honest and humble people, and I think the wine directly translates that. And then so when I came back, I always knew that I wanted to do Chenin, because that's without a doubt, I think our big calling card. And then I just wanted to interpret Cabernet Franc the way I actually see it. I do love the more bolder extracted styles, but for me, a Cabernet Franc was always about accuracy and precision. And back in 2016 when we started Breton, we were kind of the odd one out. And it's nice to see the last 10 years, a lot of more winemakers and producers are going for that more accurate, focused style, that Loire style. And I think a big reason also is our UK importer and friend Richard Kelly, who are, without a doubt for me, is the world's leading in master of wine, and especially the Loire area. And it's nice when you work with someone that are really passionate about the area and the varieties as well.
We've been celebrating white wine this week as we're still in the throes of summer. 2025 is underway, and it is weather by and large. It requires some cool white wine to take the sting out of the hot days. With regards to the Chenin Blanc, certainly not pouring any cold water on the Chenin that the French make, but I think most people are of an opinion that the best Chenin Blanc in the world is coming out of South Africa. Ken Forrester talks about our cool sunshine that elevates the grape to something special. Now, again, without demeaning at all the area which has inspired so much of your own winemaking, it does seem that producers like yourself have allowed us to take Chenin Blanc in South Africa to another level with the climate, with the warmth, with the sunshine, giving us an advantage that perhaps the Loire Valley doesn't have.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're privileged that we have the oldest soils in the world, and then some really old vineyards. And I think it's just generational knowledge and wealth of farming these old vineyards. And I think also when you think of the proximity of our vineyards to the ocean, we really have an ocean influence. So I think that has a massive part, especially with disease pressure. And I think that's a big problem at the moment in the Loire. If you think of the 24 vintage, I think it's probably some of the wettest vintages that France had in the last few years. So that plays a massive role. And yeah, I think with us in global warming, we for the last 10 years, I think we are on the forefront of farming our vineyards better, just thinking a few steps ahead. And it's amazing to see how many acknowledged and well-established wine estates around the world send their kids or winemakers to South Africa for a harvest, just to come and experience of how we are dealing with these difficult changes. But I think when you taste all these beautiful Chenins, and again, it's one of those varieties that are so versatile, from the beautiful sparkling wines that it produces to really a stainless steel crisp and fruity, to even these beautiful old vineyards that make really serious concentrated wines.
There is much that can be done with Chenin Blanc. You will be doing much with it because the harvest is nearly here and you've got 2025 wines to come. Are we expecting anything new, different, exciting from Lukas van Loggerenberg this year? And will you be feeling just a tiny little bit of pressure now that you are Lukas van Loggerenberg, Cape Winemakers Guild?
No, not at all. Yeah, when those people that know me, I'm quite down on earth. Yeah, I'll probably just keep on doing what we've been doing. And it was amazing, Sam, when we got together for the first time and took some pictures, which is always me at my most uncomfortable. She just said, just keep on making the wines that you are producing. Yeah, so the only thing new for us is we planted with a very good friend, Joshua Joubert, in the Polkadraai on Karibib some Grenache, which I'm really excited about. So 2025 will be the first vintage of some Grenache, and especially I can't wait to see what it does on that Polkadraai granite terroir. So that's the only new vineyard coming into our cellar this year.
I think Grenache is one to watch generally in 2025. We've seen some inklings, some new Grenache from people like Philima that has caught the attention. 2025 could be a big year for Grenache with Van Loggerenberg at the helm. Lukas, best of luck for the upcoming harvest. Congratulations again. It's a richly deserved honour. Great to see you as part of the guild. Keep making fabulous, fabulous wine, and we'll see you down in the vineyards to sample some Grenache later this year.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
There we go. Lukas van Loggerenberg, the newest member of the Cape Winemakers Guild. And if there's one person I suspect the French would love to kidnap and take back home, it would be implanting Lukas in the Loire Valley for some of his South African magic. As we roll through summer and into the start of 2025, we've discussed the beauties of South African Chardonnay and some wonderful examples, the delight of Chenin Blanc and how it continues to be a flag bearer. But what of something new, something different, something that's a little off the beaten track? In the last year or two, we've seen grapes like Colombar rise to the attention of the wine world. The one that I think could have even more of an impact in 2025, albeit in still rather small numbers, is a Greek grape that has found its way onto local shores. It was Gary Jordan who was determined to bring a Sirtico to South Africa. It took him 2 decades or thereabouts. finally made it happen. The Molyneux's doing likewise. Ibn Sadi playing around with some Assyrtiko. And then the man who delights in annoying so many of us by making absolutely brilliant wine and then only releasing about 11 bottles of the stuff so nobody can ever get hold of it. Sakkie Mouton, lovely to have you back on the show. A warm welcome as something of a fellow Greek, because much as I have married into a Greek family and thus discovered a love of Assyrtiko, so you too have discovered this grape and discovered it's something you can have quite a lot of fun with.
Yeah, Dan, so yeah, the Assyrtiko, there was a Assyrtiko planted in Vredendal on the west coast, and I basically found out about it from the Vinpro guy in that area. He told me about it, and immediately I was just like, I have to try it, because I think from Vermentino to Assyrtiko, from making a Vermentino and then trying to make an Assyrtiko, it just made sense. And yeah, last year I made. It was about 320 bottles. So it was a really, really small production, one 228 liter barrel, just to experiment with it, see what it can do. And then I ended up planting some. I planted some this year. So hopefully in the next 3 years, there will be my own little vineyard. I'll be able to make some more. So there will be some available, hopefully then for everyone. But yeah, it's a very exciting varietal to be working with, especially in the West Coast.
If I look at Assyrtiko very broadly from a Greek perspective, the Assyrtiko from Santorini, from where it is most famous, or some of the smaller producing islands like Tinos or Paros, you have that very steely, very linear, very dry style that benefits from often quite volcanic rock, but also from the winds that sweep through the Cyclades. You then get a different style of Assyrtiko from the mainland, wine that is fruitier, wine that is richer, wine that has got a very appreciably different feel to it. Where does the Assyrtiko that you've made, that you've tasted from South Africa, head to? Where do you think we're going to find a sweet spot in terms of our understanding of South African Assyrtiko?
Well, I think obviously the one that I made, what was interesting is I sent a bottle to Johannes, the winemaker at Vasaltis in Santorini, to kind of hear what he thought about it, just to also see if I was on the right path. And he said for him what was interesting is there was a lot more fruit in this one than the ones that are in Santorini. But then also he saw my grapes and he said that the clone that we have in the West Coast, or in South Africa, I think there's only one clone at the moment, it is the more aromatic clone. So he said that might be the reason that there is a bit more fruit in this one. But I think for me, coming from the West Coast, where thinking about Santorini, you've got heavy winds, it's very dry, it's hot. You've got strong soils, I guess, in terms of the more the volcanic soils, where in the West Coast you've got sand, but I mean also in Greece you've got spots where it's very sandy. So I think in terms of that, the closest we might get to a real, let's say, Santorini styled Assyrtiko would be to plant it in the West Coast. That's just my opinion. But then again, tasting the ones from Jordan, it is phenomenal. It's some of the best Assyrtiko there is in South Africa. I think it's the best one at the moment in South Africa. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of years for us to figure out exactly where it's going to be. But definitely, it's a grape worth planting for sure. If I see how it's growing, it's really enjoying the West Coast for sure.
A grape worth planting. I won't disagree with you, partly because I love Assyrtiko and also because that which I have tried so far has been wonderful. It does, though, raise the question in this country of ours, Sakkie, where our Sauvignon Blanc is the best seller, our Chenin Blanc is the best in the world, our Chardonnay is getting better and better and better, our Semillon, especially old vine, is just wonderful, Colombard is raising its head, Grenache Blanc is exciting to make. There are just more and more and more wines. Where do we stop? Where do we draw the line? And how do the winemakers like you guys work out, you know what, enough is enough?
No, I think how I've always gone about it is the fact that the stuff that's already around, obviously we need to make that better and better. But let's say, for example, in another 15 to 20 years, I think if everything has been discovered, we have to move on to the new stuff. So I think it's time to start experimenting with the new varietals and see where they can take us, so that in 15 to 20 years, we can have older vineyards of that, and we can start making that, because there is only so much old vine Chenin you can make, and only so much old vine Colombar you can make. At some stage, we're going to run out of that, and we need new things. So for me, that's been what's been my driving force behind all these new varietals. Is I think it's time to start experimenting and time to start seeing what we can do with these varietals. It's exciting, you know, if we can find something that can be just as good as Chenin in South Africa, why not do it? But you have to start experimenting with it.
So we've got Assyrtiko to look forward to. We've got, I'm sure, many other things to look forward to, because you are a creative force as well as a wonderful winemaker. What is trickier for you, Sakkie, coming up with and making this amazing wine, or coming up with more fabulous names? Because after giving us Revenge of the Crayfish, there are some pretty high expectations in terms of what you call the stuff you produce.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, thinking about the Afrikaans names that we have for our wines, which is fantastic and very, very cool. For me, it's always been about also being different with my names. So I think the English names, you know, Revenge of the Crayfish, it's such a catchy thing, you know, Dawn of the Salty Tongues. I want to push boundaries with names as well. I think you have to, you know, I think we've reached the point where all the Afrikaans names at this stage is basically, they've been taken, and it's still cool and it still needs to be done. But I think now we need something new and something more interesting than that. So I don't know. I'll have to see. My mind keeps spinning and I keep getting new ideas, but I don't know where I'm going to be in the next 15 years in terms of branding. But I have an idea of what I want to do, and I think people will just have to hang on and see what comes out.
Well, there are many of us in an excited queue behind Greg Sherwood to see exactly what that is. Quickly, before we let you go on this Assyrtiko topic, I know you've planted the grapes. When can we expect to see the first of this Assyrtiko in bottle?
So hopefully for the 2025 harvest, I will be making another small batch of Assyrtiko, but my own vineyard only 2027.
All right, we'll wait till 2027, but in the interim, one favour to ask, Sakkie, and I ask, please, I implore you. I know you sold the entire lot to Peter Tempelhof at Fane, and I'm not sure even he's got any left. So just set aside one case, please, for the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, and you can get the rest off to Pete.
Sure, Dad. I'll try and find some.
All right, I love it when wine stories bring these amazing new narratives into play, and this is one of them. Best of luck with the upcoming harvest, best of luck with the Assyrtiko journey, best of luck with coming up with new cool names, because between those and the wine, you put a lot of smiles on many faces, Sakkie.
Thanks. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me here.
There we go, Sakkie Mouton, not just making some wonderful wine, but such a cool guy, such cool names to his wine, and one of the new producers with many more to follow, I suspect, taking Assyrtiko out of Greece and giving it a particularly South African spin.